Welcome to the Healthy Relationships Initiative podcast. Our goal is to provide information and tools to help you build happier, healthier, and safer relationships of all kinds. To learn more about HRI, please visit www.guilfordhri.org and check us out on social media at GuilfordHRI.
Hello, and welcome to today's Healthy Relationships Initiative Relationship Booster. We're glad you're here joining with us today. My name is Christine Murray. I'm the director of the Healthy Relationships Initiative, which is also housed in the Center for Youth, Family, and Community Partnerships at UNCG Greensboro, where I also serve as the director. I'm going to tell you a little bit to get started about the Healthy Relationships Initiative. The mission of the Healthy Relationships Initiative is to promote happy, healthy, and safe relationships of all kinds in Guilford County and beyond. And we invite you to check out our website at guilfordhri.org to learn more and connect with a lot of our online resources that we have available there, as well as please check us out on social media at GuilfordHRI. Before we get started, just a few logistics for today's program. First of all, we invite you to share questions or comments in the chat room. We do keep the chat room so that the only person that can see your question is our moderator, whose name is Camilla. So if you have a question that you'd like to direct to her, please go ahead and submit it to her attention. And also, before you leave the program today, we'll be sharing a feedback form to get your opinions on what went well, maybe other topics you'd like to see in the future. So that helps us learn more about how we can continue to improve our programs as well as keep them strong. The topic for today's Healthy Relationships Initiative Relationship Booster is blended families. And we're really excited to have our guest here with us today, Rosanna Magalhaes. And Rosanna, welcome.
Thank you.
Yeah, we're so glad.
We're honored to be here.
Thank you. And if you could go ahead and tell us a little bit about your professional background, and especially as it relates to today's topic of blended families.
Okay. I'm a therapist, and I work with a large range of age. So I do have worked with kids that are from blended family, and also couples and family in general. So as a therapist, I see the family, the blended family, with the same eyes that we see all families. They are all together with this intention to have a good relationship, a happy relationship. And sometimes there are some struggles, and we are going to be talking about happy moments and not so happy moments today. So I'm glad you're here.
Thanks so much, and I think that that's a great way to start because we know that in some ways blended families and their experiences are similar to any other kind of family, but then there's also some unique potential strengths as well as possible challenges that they may encounter too. So let's just talk a little bit about when you are, as a counselor, when you see clients, whether it's children, the couples, or even a whole family together, what are some of those common experiences that you see in blended families, your work?
Well, what we normally tend to see is the couples, they come into this new relationship with the intention to, one, have a partner, and two, to continue having a structure of the family. And sometimes we have a fact that's not so common in regular family, which is developmental age very close to each other. So this can be challenging to, unless you have twins, you are not going to have kids like 3, 4, 5, or 6. It's not normal when you have just one like blood family. But in blended family, we have that. So we have noticed that it can be difficult for parents to have similar developmental age and to attend to the demand of the kids. So this is one thing that it can be difficult. On the other hand, it's very supportive because being a single parent is difficult. So if you have a partner, you can share your experience, you can share your happiness, your frustration, So when you came from a single family and then become another family, and a blended family, you tend to be more feel supported. So this is something that I have noticed. Like when I have been seeing single parents, either single father or single mother, when they come together with another partner, tend to feel a little bit less pressure, and the support of the other partner helps with the relationship with them.
Yeah, that's really, you brought up so much just in this little small section here. And I think going back to the first point around the same ages, that is something that can be very interesting, having maybe children in a very, who are very similar in ages and what that looks like. And I think also sometimes something that I've seen in some blended families would be maybe very different developmental ages, or possibly too even something that that I've also seen among some of the blended families that I'm familiar with would be that there may be older children, and then it's sort of like, partner one, partner twos, and then they might have another child who's even much younger too. So I think sometimes that can happen as well. And then I'll also add too about the piece, I'm glad you sort of mentioned that, for many people, what happens is you have a period of being a single parent before entering into that blended family relationship. And that's another thing that could be different, where you might have one partner that has children or both partners that have children. And so you might have either mixed or, kind of a combining two sets of children, or you could have only one person has children and is a single parent, and then the other person maybe hasn't even, been a parent up until that point, and then they're becoming a parent to a teenager, maybe, let's say. So I think that's an important kind of starting point for this discussion, that there's a lot, we're kind of using the term blended family, but actually we're really talking about a lot of different possible configurations.
I'm happy you mentioned that, because it is. It has this two, and really there is not only two, there's a lot of ways to see that family have different developmental age under that family, and this can be challenging.
So let's start on a positive note here, because I know we're going to get into a lot of challenges, and probably people who are listening today are interested in hearing about the challenges and some strategies for working through them. But let's start, before we go down that path, let's start and think about some strengths. Can you think of some unique sort of strengths or maybe opportunities that blended families have that maybe other families who are not blended families might not have?
So I think that the relationship between step siblings brings a lot of strength to it. So the ability to have, which was previously blended family strange, coming into your family, making part of your daily life, helps. What I have been seeing is they struggle, of course, but they get strength on that, because they learn to manage that struggles. They learn to understand the other person and not only the blood family. So what I have been seeing is there is this capability of becoming more empathic. So becoming more able to put yourself in the other person's shoes. So I think that is a strength of the blended family. Of course, the parents, when you are the first marriage parent, both of you went through the pregnancy normally, and then from the birth of the child. And when it's a blended family, as an adult also, there is a need for more flexibility. And it's not like my way is the right way. What we see is people learn to open more, to understand that there are other ways to be a parent besides the way they see as the way to be a parent. So flexibility.
Yeah, in many ways it's an opportunity to kind of rewrite the rules or come up with a new set of rules. Like you're saying, they're kind of almost forced into this situation of becoming a little bit more flexible and realizing that, we may need to rewrite some of these rules here, or we may need to come up with some different ways of doing things, and we can make some choices. So it can be a very empowering process if people bring that spirit of flexibility to it.
Yeah, you're right. When you have this intention to create these new rules for that new family, so in the carrying of that, you have this more process of agreeing and with it is that we are going to be having in our family, our new family.
And I think, too, there can also even be almost more opportunities to talk through things and more opportunities to be intentional about something. So, sometimes I think if people haven't gone through that experience, maybe they just automatically follow traditions in their own family or the way that they've always been doing things. But, really that blending process is an opportunity to say, well, why do you celebrate the holidays this way? Or why do you have this rule? Why do I have this rule? Let's talk about these things and kind of reflect on that, which of course as counselors we both would agree probably that that's a positive thing to do, is to self-reflect and take some time to think critically about decisions.
Yeah, and on that, I think we can go back on the strength of blended families. It takes some creativity. Let's rethink what we have been doing and how we can do that in a different way now.
So let's talk a little bit about sort of the development of a blended family, because again, we're kind of using the terminology of a blended family, but actually what that looks like can be very different over the course of time. So we'll kind of start with even maybe before a couple decides to get married or commit and become a blended family, and then walk through kind of what happens over time. So just kind of starting from that very earliest point, in what ways do you think that the sort of dating process or the time frame where before a couple actually decides to blend, how does that set the stage for what's going to happen next?
Yeah, I think that the first step is common to blended and first family. We date, we get engaged to be sure that we can feel safe with the other person and we can trust the other person. And the baseline, I think, is we don't have trust, and if we don't feel safe, we're not going to get together. So this is the same with a blended family. So let's get that time when we are dating, when we are getting engaged, to really know each other and see if we are feeling safe. And of course, because it is a blended family and preparing to become a blended family, it's very important that sensitive issues comes before the commitment. Like, let's talk about money. What are we going to do? Let's talk about house responsibilities, because it might be very different than was in the previous relationship. Just being clear about what we expect from each other. Because hidden expectations can bring a lot of problems into the relationship. So in my experience, what I have seen is couples that before becoming a new family, they spend the time to reflect and talk and sometimes even write what they have been taught. They tend to have less opportunity for this connection during the relationship.
Right, and the more they try to navigate some of those sensitive topics from the beginning helps to set the stage for probably a smooth transition into officially becoming a blended family, but really working through those. And, personally, I don't know what you think about this, but personally I would suggest people try to have those kind of conversations as much as possible before really getting children involved in the relationship and building that sort of connection with the other person, because, and there's a big range of difference between a toddler and a teenager, of course, and what that looks like, but, it almost forces couples to some extent to really talk through some more serious issues up front to avoid the possibility of bringing someone into their child's life who, there may be some issue that would come up that isn't something that they can work through.
Yeah, I completely agree. And what we are seeing so far, unfortunately, is that the second relationship tends to dissolve 10% more than the first relationship. So if we do what you're saying, like let's take some time even before bringing the other person. Because it's not that the other person is or is not a good person. It's that some values might not be meeting enough to become a new family.
Right.
So, and why bring the kids into this relationship if it is a volatile relationship that is not, has not been discussing important points?
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that's a good point. It's not necessarily, sometimes there are people who are people that should be probably avoided or kind of toxic, but a lot of times it's not necessarily one person's a good person or a bad person. It's more just there's maybe some key fundamental differences. And we've done some previous relationship boosters on recovering after breakups and, you know, on dating and things like that. So I would encourage people to check some of those out if they're interested in those topics, because we can't spend too much time on them today. But I do think one thing that's come up a lot when we've talked to the different experts that we've brought in is just healing from a previous relationship, you know, before you enter into that next relationship and how important that is. And I think that is probably especially heightened for blended families, that if there's, you know, if there was a previous divorce or a really serious breakup that's continuing to cause a lot of, you know, stress or, you know, different emotional reactions, then trying to come into a new relationship and navigate all of these issues can be really complicated.
Absolutely. Even at that, we can have a blended family that it is a result of the passing of one of the partners before. So there is the grief that the blended family has. It's not, it can't have. There are some losses that were necessary for the blended family to exist. So what you said is really important. It can be a challenge and can also be an opportunity. So we are talking and experiencing and opening about the process of grief and in a situation that it is forming a new nucleus to be supportive in that situation.
Yeah. So kind of, I think one more piece of this let's say, marriage or pre-commitment phase around the dating, I think I'd be interested if you have any sort of practical suggestions for the people who are listening, like how to introduce somebody into their child's life, or just a time, you know, because sometimes you'll hear about people who it's like, oh, this is my new, you know, partner and we're getting married like in a few weeks. And, you know, that, I mean, honestly, I think that's very difficult for children to adjust to. So do you have any practical suggestions for, you know, how parents who are considering a new relationship or a really serious commitment toward becoming blended families can kind of build that trust that you were talking about?
And of course, just referring to what you said, it depends on the developmental age of the kid. So the young kids is one way and teenagers is another way. I think the basic is really to respect that it's a choice that is not really the kid's choice. So respect that they are going to be, in a way, receiving someone in their life that is not their choice to have in their life. So talking to them and reinforcing that what they're going to be experiencing, it's normal. So validating whatever they experience and open dialogue. Is that the sense of I'm here for you no matter what. Basically, if it is teenagers, we tend to feel, oh no, teenagers they already know what they want, but maybe they're the ones that are struggling the most. So just normalizing that it can be a joy and it can be a struggle sometimes. So opening up the dialogue.
Yeah, like keeping good conversation, giving sort of good opportunities for the potential step-parent and the children to really get to know each other, and that might take some time, especially depending on the ages too, like especially like you're saying, kind of teenagers, it may seem like they're really independent, but, you know, but they're not. They still have a lot of needs for their parents, and, you know, but it might take them a lot longer to open up to a potential future step-parent too. So for parents to kind of be open, as well as I would say if we're talking about two partners who both have children, there's almost like the whole families are kind of, dating and getting to know each other and building those relationships. And so, I think it kind of helps shift us into, kind of the early stages of actually being a blended family. And so let's say if we're talking about marriage, for example, like, so the couple's married, maybe they're just moving in together with a family and sort of officially becoming a blended family. And before we open that up more generally, I think I'll say, like, kind of related to something that you just said, kind of balancing the attention. I think for a lot of kids, it can be difficult. And one of the feelings where they might feel threatened is there's this new partner and my mom or my dad's wife, and, are they going to be getting all of their attention? Or are these, especially if there's maybe other stepchildren too. So I would think, what thoughts do you have about that specific, really early piece of that transition?
One thing that research has supported, and I have noticed in my work as well, is the co-parenting. How important it is that on the first 18 months or even 24 months, that the step-parent has no disciplinary role. It's the time to build the relationship with that step-kid. Of course, he or she or they can support the other partner, the parents, the biological parents, in looking at homework and checking if the kids are going to school. But the disciplinary parenting should not come into play before 18 to 24 months.
At least,
right? Exactly, at least. And of course, in an agreement.
Right.
And we are going to be stepping into this role in a planned way. So I'm going to be sitting with my partner and talking, how is that going to be right now? Now it seems like the kids trust you and the kids are comfortable around you and they believe that you're here with us, not to be mean or anything. So we can maybe change a little bit the role, but let's see how we're going to do that.
Yeah, I'm so glad you brought that up because I think that's a really important piece of this that oftentimes people get a little bit confused about, but especially kind of from that thought of building that positive relationship between the child and their future step-parent, this idea that the step-parent, especially early on, like you're saying that 18 to 24 months, and we both like at least 18 to 24 months, if ever, but to not play that disciplinarian role, that is not the role for a step-parent typically in a sort of what would be kind of a healthy transition to that. And I would say I usually kind of like to recommend to think of it as more of almost like a babysitter type of role in a way. If they're younger, that they might have to discipline if they're alone with the child, but the major discipline is going to be sort of reported back to the biological parent, let's say, to kind of address that. Or especially if we're talking older children, it's more of like a role model or a mentor type of relationship, like an older friend, but who backs up the biological parent, but who's really playing a very minimal role in the discipline piece. And, and obviously we both are in firm agreement about that with our family counseling background, but for those who may not have that background, why is that? Why is this such a thing that we're both so clear about, do you think?
Well, because what is the basic for attachment? It's trust and safety.
Yep.
If I don't have that developed, it's very difficult that I'm going to offer respect or offer any type of consideration to the other parents, to the co-parents. So I think basically because there is the structure of attachment tells us that the basic is I need to develop trust and safety with the other person before anything.
Before the child is going to be open to accepting the
disciplinary
influence, they have to trust and respect them and feel trusted and respected by the step parent. And I just, think the most common thing probably heard in step families is you're not my parent, you don't have the right to tell me that. You know, and that's maybe when the step parents are kind of overstepping the discipline role. So, yeah, obviously, yeah.
You mentioned something that it came to mind, an example that I would like to share with. If as soon as the parents, they remarried, what they did was they sat for a week, 1 hour a week, and they set up the rules for the family and age developmentally appropriate rules, and then they discussed what would be the consequences if that rule was not enforced, and they put on the refrigerator or on the side of the refrigerator. So if the biological parent is not at home, the step parent can reinforce the rule and say, hey, here's what we agreed, right, and let's do this, and wait for the biological parent to come and see if anything else will be done. So it's not being a disciplinary, it's helping to have that rule reinforced. For example, you can ask a child, a teenager, to be cordial, to be gentle.
Right.
So if there's no gentleness, we are going to have this consequence. And again, developmentally appropriate consequence. And this way, the stepfather can help the biological father in having the rules, but not being a disciplinary.
Yeah, so there can be shared discussion and agreement about what are the rules going to be, which is involvement in the sort of world of discipline or that piece of it. And I'm glad you brought that up, because it shouldn't necessarily be that a step parent has no say, or, you know, imagine a case where you've got, you know, one biological parent with a child or 2 children or however many, and then the other, you know, step parent or partner in the couple, they also have children. We can't have 2 separate sets of rules and totally separate discipline styles, right? I mean, that would be an explosive situation. So having some shared rules that everybody sort of agrees to, but also then giving some freedom, you know, in how people respond to it, and then, you know, who's in charge of that. And I'll add too, one of the points that we'll try to get to a little bit later is if there's sort of shared custody situations. I think that can be a real challenge in blended families, because you may have children at different times sort of coming in and out of the home depending on different custody schedules. You know, and having that shared set of rules can be a very useful piece there too, because especially, and this is a little bit of the ideal situation, but if there can be, these are the, you know, 5 rules. I think it's the American Academy of Pediatrics that recommends that co-parents where children are going back and forth between homes have, you know, about 5 rules that are shared between the homes. And, you know, how nice if they could be the same rules in different environments. But I will say, I do think kids can adapt. You know, kids can go into school and they have one set of rules there, and home and they have another set of rules there. So, you know, there's ways to help children transition between different sets of rules. But having those discussions and being proactive about it is what's going on. What are some other topics or other ways that step parents or parents in blended families can really set the stage in the early days? So I love the idea of like the hour-a-day meeting, you know, where we're going to sit down, check in, talk through how things are going and what do we want. Are there other ideas that you would suggest?
Well, there's no other idea coming to mind, but what I feel that is really important is check in between the couple. And making sure that from the beginning they are having time for their relationship as well. So validating each other and expressing any more soft emotion, something that made you sad, something that made you disappointed. So opening dialogue, I believe it is something that helps the blended family to be more cohesive and more connected.
Yeah, so really kind of nurturing that couple relationship is so important too. It can be very overwhelming, dealing with a lot of the challenges with the children in entering into this new phase of the family, but also making sure that that couple relationship is getting nurtured too, which might mean, you know, a date night or just conversations that they're having to keep building their relationship strong too.
Yeah, date nights are very, very important. If you cannot do that once a week, at least once a month is what is suggested. It's just for you and your partner, and go and it's an opportunity to be nurturing that relationship. It's really important.
And so, okay, so after we've kind of officially had the family, they become a blended family, you know, over the long haul, like what are some of the, you know, other challenges that you might see like later on in the process of blended families and how they develop over time?
One is what you just mentioned, is the visitation to the parents that's not living in the house. So this is very sensitive to the kids, and in a way is very sensitive to the parents as well. So how we see happening is most of the time the child that's coming back home from a visitation with the other parent, it brings some stress. It's very rare that they are just walking back into the home with no stress at all. So offering time, space for that child is not a good idea. The child's coming back on Sunday at 4 o'clock. At 5 o'clock, we are having dinner at the pizza place, and he has to come or she has to come. No, leave some space and program that child's coming back, and it has some stress coming as well. What I have experienced is if the child doesn't feel validated, the tendency is that Sunday morning, Sunday evening are becoming very chaotic, which starts the week in a very difficult way.
Yeah.
So I would invite blended families to be very aware of that. And just the second point about visitation as well, no question asked. I can be very curious about how is the other house, what are you eating there? No question. If the child wants to share, or if the adolescent wants to share, okay, they are going to share. But if they don't want to share, we need to offer that space, because they are living in two different spaces, and it's their decision in a way to share what they want to share.
Yeah, and even maybe setting up some kind of rituals around the transition times, you know, what that looks like. Maybe it's, you know, it's the child would go spend some time in their room, or maybe they can just watch a little TV or do something to kind of unwind. And I think especially in a blended family, it can be different, and that can be a big adjustment for kids, because if they're used to being in a single parent family, they're coming back and it's probably just the kids are coming back and the parent has been, there's no other kids maybe in the home. Whereas in a blended family, they might be coming back, there could be other activity going on if there's other kids. So, you know, really thinking through those transition points. And I think over the long haul too, just other transitions that can come up. So let's say you have a child moving from preschool to kindergarten and starting elementary school, or, you know, just making different times of year can be stressful for blended families, figuring out different schedules. Something that can happen in some blended families, maybe the kids don't even go to the same school, because, you know, one set of kids might be going to one school, another might be going to another school. So just there's a lot of different transitions, whether we're talking about the kind of really immediate transitions of children coming in and out of homes during, you know, custody situations, or like just major life transitions. And so for the parents to be really proactive and sort of, like you're suggesting, thinking through how are we going to navigate those.
Noticing that it is very, very sensitive. It's like you moving every week from one week.
Yeah.
And there's another point that I would like to bring as well, which is, and sometimes out of really trying to encourage awareness on the kids, parents tend to say, see, this is how you are when you come back from your mother or from your father. And this is, in a way, it's very detrimental. It comes from the good heart, of course. You want your child to be aware, but it's very detrimental that they are being judged every time they come from one of the parents' house. Or, oh, this is what you do at that other house, not here. Let's make, if this is the case, make it more peaceful.
Yeah.
So you can do this there, and our rules here are a little different. So what do you need to transition into our rules right now?
Yeah, no, that's a great point, is really thinking through that and how to talk about it.
Yeah.
And for the parents also to really make sure that maybe a new step-parent is also following the same, sort of guidelines. If there's things that the parent wants the step-parent to either say or not say around those transition times. So I think we've already covered the discipline topic, but one thing I'm interested in talking a little bit more is what happens if the siblings, if we've got siblings. You talked earlier on about how those new step-sibling relationships can be a really positive opportunity, but what if the kids just aren't getting along, for whatever reason, and it's sort of creating tension in the family or even in the marriage?
Yeah, and I'm going to start this referring a book, and the book is The Whole Brain Child, 12 Strategies to Develop, I don't know, but it's Daniel Siegel. I don't remember, it's a title, very big. But
We'll post that in the chat room so everybody can find that.
One thing that Daniel Siegel suggests there is connect to redirect. So if we're having step-siblings revelry, so it's not siblings, it connects is getting very close to both of them. Specifically, one of them that we have been noticing that it has been more reactive, so connecting with that sibling, with that child, with that son or daughter, and understanding what is happening with them. And then redirecting, which is the redirection is just showing them that this cannot continue to happen. And this process of connecting and redirecting, it might need to be done several times. It's not that's going to be done one time and they're going to be getting along very beautifully. It's the persistence and this one that is more causing the argument, if there is one specific. Just being able to express over and over and over again what is it that is causing that behavior, that it is the result of breaking. I see that it is mostly a biological father or mother or parent role. It is to address that and to make sure that that child, that adolescent, is getting what he or she needs in it.
And I really like that connect and then redirect, because I think probably a lot of parents think I want to redirect first, and then once my child changes their behavior, I'll connect with them. And I will say, for the record, I'm guilty of this myself too. It's something I've been working on, is trying to, validate my child's feelings if they're really misbehaving, maybe it seems like it's coming from a place of anger or whatever, to say, like, you really seem upset about that first before going in and saying, stop doing that, right? It's something very simple to some extent, but it's hard to do in the moment. But that's a nice way to remember the proper order almost around the connecting. And actually, interestingly, when you said it, it made me think back to when we were talking about the step-parent, not necessarily playing the disciplinarian role, but almost in this connect and then redirect, a nice role for the step-parent could possibly be part of the connecting, to really be like, man, you seem really upset about that thing, or boy, it seems like a really, you're really frustrated right now. Like there's nothing necessarily potentially, in most cases, there's always exceptions, but potentially harmful for a parent or a step-parent to be part of that part of the discipline process, the connecting, the validating.
But I'm glad you mentioned that, you know, I'm a little guilty about that because one of our intentions is really to offer this sense of we, as parents, we have not learned this. We are learning now. So as you notice that, oh my goodness, I heard about the connection connected to redirect and I didn't do that. Okay, I noticed that I didn't do, I'm going to do next time.
Right.
Like this ability to notice that there is no perfection, but the intention is necessary and the persistence in doing that. So,
yeah, I think as long as people remember, it's all a work in progress.
Yeah.
I think that along the path towards becoming and being a blended family, there's going to be a lot of bumps in the road. And I think to some extent, not to be real negative or kind of, you know, sounding too doom and gloom for people who are listening, but it's just a reality. You're blending people, you're kind of starting a parenting dynamic at an older age where a child is already, you know, even if they're only 2, they're not used to the step parent being around. It's going to be challenging. And the more people free themselves for the need to be like, man, you know, I handled that situation, I want to handle every situation perfectly, to I'm going to do my best in this moment, and then if it goes badly, I'll take some time to reevaluate and try to do better the next time.
yeah. Be gentle with yourself is also showing the entire family that we can be gentle with ourselves and with each other.
Yeah. What do you think are some really critical relationships and communication skills that are very important toward blended families, especially probably if we're talking about maybe the parents together, but it also might apply how they talk to children.
Well, one thing that I tend to encourage in my families and on the people that I work with that are members of blended family is getting deeper on the emotions, and this is more for adults and maybe sometimes for teenagers. We tend to see clearly our reactive emotions. We tend to see the anger, we tend to see the disappointment, we tend to see the frustration, and in a way feel like, what is it that's feeding that anger? Let me see if I can see, am I feeling disrespected? Am I feeling unimportant? Am I feeling fearful that I'm not playing an important role in this family? So my invitation is that we can notice our reactive emotions, they're very real and true, and be able to drop below that emotion and try to be curious about what is feeding that strong emotion. And communicating the more soft emotion helps with preventing reactive behavior between most of the time.
So that's really kind of going deeper into evaluating your own emotions and then being able to share that. And then also kind of being curious about, say, your partner's emotions, like, wow, that thing really made you upset. What do you think that was about? Or what was behind that? And I think especially in blended families, that can be really important because just like we were talking about just a few minutes ago, oftentimes blended families are a result of divorce or grief and a loss or some other difficult past experience. And, so sometimes people in a blended family or in a remarriage can be, sort of triggered in a current situation, but it might be stemming back from something that they've experienced in the past.
And what research has been showing is the first 2 years are the hardest ones. So make sure you will get better. You will get better. But these 2 first years, a lot of adaptation. It's a new scenario and everything is new. And we can imagine that we'll be in a way. And actually, there's a research from this doctor at the College of Medicine in Houston. His name is Dr. James Brown. And he says that his research is specifically with stepfather. So it's the father that came into a residence where the mother was already living, or the mother went to live with the father, but specifically with stepfather. And he identified that the family that was more consistent and where the children were more adapted and less stressed were the ones that were able to, for the first 18, 24 months, no disciplinary role from step-parent, the ones that were able to be very connected in terms of the marriage relationship, finding time and being intentional in finding that time and having a moment of conversation, which technology has really making that piece very challenging.
Right.
I think that it's 5-10 minutes on the weekend.
Yeah.
It's like finding a time to talk and to be connected with it. That's what he
being intentional about having time to talk as a family. So I like that. The three things were having that intentional time to talk, really focusing on building that strong marriage, and then also minding that discipline boundary and not having the step-parents be directly involved. And those, that research from Dr. Bray are three things that really help. And those are three very practical things that people can work toward implementing in the blended family environment. So let's see. Let me check in. We're getting to our last 10 to 15 minutes here, so let me take a moment to check in with Camilla to see if any questions have come in.
We sure do. So in instances where the children in blended families are of very different ages, what are some different ways that the family can connect? For instance, if the children are not in the home because they're adults and maybe there are some younger children, what are some ways that the family can connect?
Oh, what a good question. And again, the word is being intentional with that connection, because to build a blended family is necessary that the relationship is there. So if the older kids are living out of the house, promoting some weekend where they can come for breakfast, so they can stay over for the weekend, and making sure that birthdays, if it is important in that specific family, that they are celebrated, and seeing what is important for the adult kids also, and being with them and promoting space and opportunities for the blend, because if not, it's not going to happen in the blend. So we need to offer space for that. And what we have seen is blended family, when one of the parents has older kids, the relationship tends to be very strong. I don't know exactly why, but it's so strong. Like my older brother or sister, and it's easier than when the developmental age is more
when it's closer. Yeah, I think with the closer ages, there can be a lot more tension and almost more pressure that the siblings have to be like super tight and best friends, and they're going to be brothers and sisters and be really close. Whereas maybe when there's a bigger age gap, it's more like, well, it's never going to be like we're super buddy perhaps, and maybe not having that expectation actually might allow that stronger relationship to develop.
Oh, interesting what you said. It might be just expectations that because they are age close to each other, they have to be friends. And when there's no high expectations, it just happens naturally.
And I think too that would be the other thing that I would really sort of add, or kind of related to that, is just to keep in mind that there is no real set formula for what a step-sibling relationship has to look like. That blending families can look very different for different families. And I'll share, even in my life, I have a twin sister and a younger brother, and then I have 3 step-siblings. But I didn't have those step-siblings until they're probably about 10 years older than me and my siblings. And I was in college when my parent got remarried, and we don't live anywhere near each other, and I think that that's okay. That I have a positive relationship with them, but it's not at all a close relationship, and that's okay. So being mindful of different stages of life and not necessarily feeling that there needs to be any, real, you have to blend, you have to be like siblings, and you have to like each other and respect each other and spend every holiday together. That just might not be the case.
Thank you for bringing our experience.
Yeah. You're welcome. You sound like the host. Do we have any other questions?
Yes, we do.
Okay, go ahead.
Do you have any advice on the best way for the birth parent to communicate with the children's other birth parent, the ex? And what kind of a relationship should the step parent have with the children's other birth parent?
That the famous answer in counseling world is it depends, right? Because there's a lot of ways that can look. I mean, I think the ideal scenario really is that everybody's getting along, everybody's sort of coming together to support, positive, open communication and relationships that really benefit the child. But Rosanna, I'm sure, especially as a counselor, you see a lot of times when that type of situation doesn't go very well. So what are your thoughts on this question?
Again, I think I'm going back to the word intentional. Becoming intentional and noticing if there are any resistance, if there is a way that I am feeling uncomfortable with this new situation, and addressing that, and addressing with yourself, and addressing with the partner. I would invite awareness, and noticing what is it that it is causing for me, this situation.
And I think along with that awareness too would just be really sort of getting aware of kind of what the situation is between the biological parents, and then saying, what's the best possible thing we can work toward in this situation? And maybe it's just being cordial when they have to see each other. Maybe it's some real interaction and real dialogue, some discussions about discipline, rules, that sort of thing. But I think that awareness is the first piece. And then, also maybe kind of not comparing your own relationship to somebody else's relationship, because the best possible scenario in one family's situation might be very different from somebody else's, and that's okay, right?
Yeah. And something we said at the beginning of this conversation was we are bringing some seeds from past relationships, and those seeds, they can be wholesome seeds and unwholesome seeds. So what is the water that's coming and it's making my seed grow, and I'm getting so agitated, and just what you said, it's bringing this intention to be as best as possible in this moment.
Were there any other questions, Camilla? Okay, I have one more before we wrap things up. Right now, when we are recording the live program, although people may listen later through our podcast or watch the video online, it might be a different time of year, but family traditions can be a big thing, and we think about that a lot around the holidays, of course. So, but that can be a real, I think, challenge, but also an opportunity for blended families. So, just real quick, because I wanted to make sure we touched on this. What are some ways that blended families can sort of bring together or navigate when they might have different traditions in their families?
And I think we go back to the beginning of this conversation also. If we have already sat down and decided what are our way of celebrating, we're okay. We probably do not have a lot to talk about now. But also the freedom of understanding if my way of celebrate holidays is completely different from my partner's and my partner's kids, we can now decide. So it's okay to celebrate in our way right now. Maybe for next year we can come everybody together, but not necessarily have what you said about the step sibling. I think it fits so well in here. Not necessarily having that society rules are going to be ruling my way in my family. Okay, so I would wish we were celebrating in this way, but it's not the wish of my partner. So maybe we can get on the same page next year if we're not this year.
So even having separate ways of celebrating, and then maybe the freedom to start some new traditions too, right?
Yeah.
So since our time is pretty much up, do you have any final thoughts or kind of what's the big takeaway piece that you'd like to make sure people walk away with today?
You know, I'm glad you mentioned that because, of course, I would recommend again the book. I think Camila has said that. I would recommend looking into that research, Dr. James Gray. And what we spoke here about the legacy of loss on a blended family, it can be pushed under the rug. And I would invite that the family will address that in a very open way. And if you need some help, there's so many counselors and therapists that can help you in this process. So it's difficult on the beginning. Science is showing us that. We have a large number of blended families in the United States. Science has been showing us way that it is difficult. And it gets better.
Keeping that positive kind of hope in mind, I think, is really important. So, and I will share too on our HRI website at guilfordhri.org. If you go to the Community Resources tab and then the services, we have some links for finding counselors and therapists, which I think can be very helpful. I'll also add one other resource that you might find helpful through Auburn University has a National Step Family Resource Center, and they've got a lot of great resources available through that resource as well. But thank you so much, Rosanna, for being here. And the time really flew by today, so I think this is a topic we probably could have talked about for hours, but I think that we really covered some important information.
I see, and I appreciate the invitation. Thank you for being with us.
All right, thanks so much. And for those of you who are here today, make sure that you please fill out the feedback form to let us know what you thought, as well as we hope that you will be joining us for our next Relationship Booster. Our live programs are taking a few weeks break off for the holidays, but we'll be back for our next program on Friday, January 17th, and our topic is going to be talking with kids about race and culture. So thank you so much for joining us, and we hope that we'll see you back another time.